Welcome to the stories that watch you back. Fear lives here. Listen carefully.
Rohan Mehta arrived at the old government college in Assam just before sunset, carrying his admission letter and a sense of unease he couldn't explain. The campus looked beautiful from a distance, surrounded by tall trees and mist-covered hills. But up close, the buildings felt abandoned and oddly silent. Even the air felt heavier, as if the place was holding its breath. The college was over 100 years old, built during the British era, and parts of it were officially closed due to structural damage. Rohan noticed broken windows, locked classrooms, and long corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly. A senior student briefly warned him to avoid the old humanities block after dark, then walked away without explaining why. Rohan's hostel room was on the third floor, and the hallway lights flickered as he dragged his suitcase inside. His roommate, Arjun, seemed nervous and avoided eye contact while unpacking his things. When Rohan asked about the warnings, Arjun only said the college had a history problem. That night, the campus fell silent unnaturally early, with no insects, no wind, and no distant traffic sounds. Around midnight, Rohan heard slow footsteps echoing in the corridor outside his room. They stopped directly in front of his door and remained there, unmoving. Rohan held his breath, staring at the door handle as if it might turn on its own. After several seconds, the footsteps resumed, dragging slowly toward the staircase. When he opened the door to check, the hallway was empty and ice cold. The next morning, Rohan asked other students about the noises, but most refused to talk. One girl quietly told him that students sometimes heard footsteps from people who were still attending classes. Before he could ask more, a professor interrupted and changed the subject. During lectures, Rohan noticed strange details about the old humanities block visible from the classroom windows. The building always looked darker than the others, even in bright daylight. Some windows appeared occupied, though the block was officially sealed. One evening, Arjun didn't return to the hostel. After dinner, his phone went unanswered, and by midnight, Rohan started to panic. When Arjun finally returned near dawn, his clothes were muddy and his eyes looked hollow. Arjun refused to explain where he had been, only repeating that he had missed the last class. The next day, Arjun stopped coming to lectures altogether. His bed remained neatly made, as if no one had slept there. A week later, Rohan heard whispers coming from the corridor at night. The voices sounded like students, discussing assignments and exams in low tones. What terrified him was that some voices spoke his name. One night, curiosity overpowered fear, and Rohan followed the whispers toward the old humanities block. The doors, which were always locked, stood slightly open. Cold air poured out from inside, carrying the smell of dust and decay. Inside the building, the lights flickered weakly, and the corridors looked frozen in time. Class schedules from decades ago still hung on the walls. Faint chalk writing covered the blackboards, freshly written despite the thick layer of dust. Rohan heard chairs scraping across the floor and the low murmur of a lecture in progress. He peeked into a classroom and saw students sitting silently at their desks. Their faces were pale, their eyes fixed forward, and none of them blinked. At the front of the room stood a professor writing on the board with unnatural movements. When the chalk snapped, every head turned toward Rohan at once, their mouths opened slightly. Smiling without warmth, Rohan ran, but the corridors twisted and extended, refusing to lead him back. Doors slammed shut around him, and the whispers grew louder, demanding he attend the class. He felt hands brushing his arms, pulling him backward. He burst out of the building and collapsed on the grass outside, gasping for breath. The humanities block behind him looked normal, dark and silent. No lights were visible, as if nothing had happened. The next day, the college announced that Arjun was missing. No one mentioned the humanities block. Rohan noticed Aryan's name still listed on the attendance sheet. Sleep became impossible for Rohan as the whispers grew louder each night. He began finding chalk dust on his desk and handwritten notes reminding him of unfinished lectures. The handwriting wasn't his. One night, Rohan woke to find his room filled with students standing silently around his bed. Their faces were familiar now, belonging to students from different eras. They waited patiently, as if expecting him to join them. Rohan screamed and ran out of the hostel, chased by footsteps that echoed unnaturally loud. The entire campus seemed awake now, filled with murmuring voices and invisible movement. The humanities block lights flickered on by themselves. As Rohan approached the gate to escape, he found it locked and rusted shut. Behind him, the whispers turned into clear voices calling him late for class. A cold hand grabbed his shoulder. The next morning, the campus returned to normal. Students attended lectures, birds chirped, and the humanities block remained sealed. Rohan Mehta was reported missing. Years later, new students occasionally noticed a young man sitting in the old humanities classroom. He always sat in the back row, eyes empty, waiting for the lecture to end. Attendance records still show his name, marked present every day.
The story ends, but something followed you. Sleep carefully.